Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the horror thriller films from 2022, titled The Coffee Table. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens with a middle-aged woman named Maria racked with unbearable labor pain. After an intense struggle, she gives birth to a healthy child, replacing her agony with overwhelming joy. The scene then cuts to a few weeks later, where we see Maria and her husband, Jesus, along with their newborn son. They are in a furniture store, where a salesperson displays an expensive coffee table, supported by two gold-plated female figures. He claims that this Swedish table is unbreakable and the best product in the store. Jesus is impressed and wants to buy, but Maria disagrees, resulting in an argument between them. An upset Jesus complains about how Maria has a say in everything in their life, including the house decorations. He adds that she decided to have the child without his permission, and even chose to name him Cayetano, which he doesn't approve of. Upon hearing this, the salesman excitedly reveals that his name is also Cayetano, but Maria gets annoyed, and calls him a sleazy businessman. However, the unfazed guy starts pitching the table again, claiming it can bring them unimaginable happiness. To add, a vase, a piece of furniture, and even a marriage can all break, but this glass will not. At this moment, the baby begins to cry, so Maria throws one final insult at the salesman before storming out. Afterward, Jesus decides to purchase the table, even if it's just to spite his wife. He asks the salesman to answer honestly if he really likes it, but the latter unexpectedly says no. Regardless, Jesus doesn't change his mind and finalizes the deal. In the next scene, we see Jesus struggling to carry the table up the stairs to his place. When the couple reaches their apartment, they're greeted by their upstairs neighbor and her daughter, Ruth. The neighbor is excited to see the baby, but Ruth seems to be in a bad mood. Her mother states it may be because of her boyfriend, but Ruth quickly claims he's not her boyfriend yet, just someone who's in love with her, and won't admit it. After a brief conversation, Maria heads inside her apartment, and the neighbor woman also walks downstairs. Once alone, Ruth approaches Jesus, shockingly revealing that her romantic interest is actually him. It turns out she tried to kiss him in the elevator a few days ago, but he avoided her. We also learn that the obsessed girl had asked him for love poems for a school project. Jesus sent her some poems, but she misunderstood this as a sign of romantic interest. Even worse, she now threatens to show the text to her parents, and urges the grown man to run away with her. But Jesus refuses, and reminds her she's only 13, while he's a married man with a baby. When Ruth persists, the annoyed guy shuts the door in her face, finally driving her away. Later, Jesus is setting up the table in the living room, while Maria feeds the baby. He soon notices there are only 4 screws instead of the 5 needed to hold the glass in place. Furious, he immediately calls the salesman and demands the missing screw. The salesman also apologizes for the mistake and agrees to deliver it. Next, the couple continues arguing about the table, which Maria still dislikes and considers unnecessarily expensive. After some heated exchanges, she decides to go to the supermarket for groceries, as Jesus' brother and his girlfriend are coming to see the baby today. She places Cayetano on the sofa and asks her husband to take care of him until she returns. Jesus asks her to bring some wine, but she shuts him down, saying that if she can't drink, neither should he. As soon as Maria leaves, Cayetano begins crying uncontrollably, so Jesus puts on some music. The baby still doesn't calm down, so Jesus picks him up and walks around the living room. He even tries to distract Cayetano by showing off the new coffee table. But then all of a sudden, in an instant, the movie takes a dark turn as we see Jesus shaken. He is smeared with blood. It turns out that he tripped over the coffee table and accidentally shattered the glass. The shards had torn through the baby's delicate head and ended his life. Elsewhere, Maria is at the supermarket when she runs into one of her old friends. They begin chatting, and she shares the joyful news of having a baby after 2 years of treatment. Back at home, Jesus is still in shock, and struggling to comprehend the horror. He begins removing shards of glass from his trembling hand when he gets a call from Maria. He answers nervously, and it turns out that Maria's friend just wants to congratulate him for the baby. But Jesus abruptly hangs up without saying anything, so Maria assumes his battery must have died. Meanwhile, Jesus finally snaps back to reality, and realizes he must act fast, as Maria could return any moment. He picks up Cayetano and notices the baby has wet himself, so he carefully changes his diaper with his trembling hands. Moments later, he gets another call from Maria, asking what kind of wine he'd like. But the panicked man gives no clear answer before hanging up again. This upsets Maria, and she leaves him an angry voicemail asking why he hung up so rudely when she was only trying to be nice. On the other hand, Jesus takes the headless body of the baby, and puts it in the crib, as if he is still alive. He decides to clean up the mess in the living room, but cannot find the cleaning supplies. The desperate man then rings the doorbell of Ruth's apartment, and she asks if he's painting because he's all in red. Jesus responds yes and requests a favor, but she wonders if he told his wife about their relationship. The annoyed man says he will tell her this afternoon, right when Ruth's mom shows up. The kind woman agrees to help with the cleaning supplies, and Ruth says she will come to his place in the afternoon to take them back. When Jesus returns to his apartment, he finds the salesman has arrived to deliver the screw. The guy apologizes for the trouble, and surprisingly reveals that the table was actually made in China, and not Sweden. He then offers to help put in the screw, but Jesus refuses and tries to get rid of him. However, the annoying man starts rambling about trivial things, and suggests they should go out for dinner or a movie sometime. He tells Jesus that he really likes him, and feels lonely because he doesn't have any friends. But Jesus is irritated by the situation, and ends up slamming the door in his face. Next, he proceeds to thoroughly clean up all the shards and blood from the living room. At one point, he spots the decapitated head beneath an armchair and starts to panic. Jesus reaches out, but he can't bring himself to touch it. Just then, a text from Maria pops up, saying she'll be home in 30 minutes. A worried Jesus immediately hurries to the shower, and scrubs the blood off his body. He later grabs some bandages and wraps his injured hand, trying to hold himself together. Not long after, Jesus hears someone ringing the doorbell, and looking through the camera, he notices it's his wife. He doesn't want to confront Maria, thus, he heads to the balcony, and considers jumping off, but can't bring himself to do it. Jesus eventually opens the door, and a worried Maria asks why it took him so long, so he explains that he was calming their baby, who wouldn't stop crying. Jesus claims that Cayetano has finally fallen into a deep sleep, and that it's best not to disturb him. He also mentions that the coffee table broke, which makes Maria laugh, as it was supposed to be unbreakable. Upon entering the living room, Maria freezes at the sight of bloodstains in the carpet, but Jesus quickly explains that he cut himself while picking up the broken glass. Maria gets annoyed that the stain won't come off and heads to the kitchen. Next, the couple is seen preparing food, while Maria continues to laugh and make fun of the unbreakable coffee table. She jokes that she would have given anything to see the look on his face when it shattered. Meanwhile, poor Jesus is sweating and panicking inside, as he's too scared to reveal the horrifying truth. Moments later, Maria tells Jesus that she'll go check on Cayetano and bring the baby monitor. She soon arrives at the room and almost approaches the crib, but Jesus abruptly arrives and stops her. He asks her to go finish preparing the meal and says he will watch over the child. The remorseful man also takes this moment to tell her that he loves her very much, and asks for her forgiveness if he has ever hurt her. This makes Maria emotional, and she claims that all the fighting is due to the new process of being parents. She tells him that as long as they are together, they will overcome everything that comes. Some time later, the couple is in the kitchen when Maria hears something dripping on the baby monitor. She wonders what it is and tries to check, but Jesus immediately claims he knows what it is and will fix it. He rushes to the baby's room, where he is overcome by terror as he notices blood dripping from the crib. After dealing with the problem, Jesus sits down with a glass of wine, right when he suddenly hears his son crying through the baby monitor. But he quickly realizes it was all in his head. At this moment, Jesus's older brother, Carlos, has finally arrived with his 18-year-old girlfriend, Cristina. Maria warmly welcomes them inside, and Carlos immediately senses Jesus's unease and asks what happened. Maria responds by explaining about the expensive coffee table and how it injured Jesus's hand earlier. Cristina then mentions that there is still blood under the armchair, so Jesus hurriedly moves to clean it. He sits on the chair, as he doesn't want anyone to see the decapitated head beneath it. Carlos says he wants to see his nephew, but Jesus responds that it was really hard to get him to sleep, so they'd better eat. However, Cristina says she likes watching babies sleep, and even shows a baby outfit her grandmother made. The outfit captivates Maria, who asks Jesus to put it on Cayetano immediately to see how cute he looks. But this only makes Jesus angry, and he acts rude towards her, so Carlos urges his younger brother to be polite to his wife even though he's annoyed. Maria tries to ease the tension by telling Cristina she wants to show her the baby's new nursery. The women head there, while Carlos asks his brother why he's so agitated. He assumes it's because of Ruth again, and suggests reporting the girl to the police. Jesus shrugs it off, saying she's just 13 and will probably forget all about him soon. Here Jesus briefly considers telling his brother the truth, but gets scared and changes his mind. They then head to the beautifully decorated nursery, the place where Cayetano will never set foot. Later, we see the four of them at the dinner table, where everyone is chatting happily except Jesus, who is sweating profusely. He drinks wine to calm his nerves, and keeps hallucinating and seeing blood everywhere. The topic of conversation then shifts to how being parents is the most beautiful thing in life. Maria considers caring for Cayetano to be her topmost priority, and reveals she loves him even more than her husband. Meanwhile, Jesus begins hearing the damn salesman's voice, describing the table and emphasizing how the glass is unbreakable. Shortly after, Carlos surprisingly announces that they will also be parents, and he's very excited that his nephew and his future daughter will play together. Maria seems happy, but Jesus doesn't show any excitement at the news, which makes his brother feel bad. When Carlos asks if he's still thinking about the freaking table, Jesus snaps, and rudely responds that he won't be happy because his brother ruined the life of an 18-year-old girl by impregnating her. He also claims that buying the coffee table in the morning was the worst mistake of his life, and storms off to the bathroom. Seeing his tantrum, everyone grows deeply worried, so Carlos decides to talk to him. At this moment, Jesus is in the bathroom, trembling as he records a farewell message for his wife. He confesses how he accidentally killed their son, but lacks the courage to tell her in person. He admits he no longer wants to live, and begs for her forgiveness for turning their lives into a living nightmare. Just then, Carlos bursts in and asks who the message is for. Later, both of them are in the baby's room, and we learn that Jesus has confessed everything to his brother. Carlos's heart sinks at the sight of the headless baby. When asked where the head is, Jesus says it's under the armchair, as he didn't have the courage to pick it up. He reveals that he has decided to jump off the balcony, but Carlos tells him to stop talking nonsense, and give him time to think about a solution. Just then, Maria shows up at the door and asks about the baby, so Carlos claims he's still asleep, and asks her to give them a few minutes alone. Maria agrees, but reminds them she'll need to wake him in 10 minutes to breastfeed him. After she leaves, Carlos consoles Jesus by telling him that accidents happen, and they must find a way to tell Maria without causing her any trauma. Jesus insists on ending his life, but his brother firmly calms him down, and says he will tell Maria himself. He warns that they mustn't let her see the headless child, or it will scar her forever. However, things take a turn for the worse when Ruth knocks on the door with her dog and demands to see Jesus. Maria mentions that he's busy, but the annoying girl insists that it's very important. Here, Ruth suddenly tells her that Jesus kissed her in the elevator, which leaves the woman stunned. Meanwhile, Jesus and Carlos come back into the living room, just as Maria arrives with Ruth. The enraged woman immediately begins questioning her husband about the accusation. Poor Jesus struggles to find words to explain when suddenly, Ruth's dog approaches the armchair and barks aggressively. Here Ruth notices the baby's head, so Carlos quickly rushes to hide the head. Maria spots the dog covered in blood and demands to know what's happening. Meanwhile, Cristina also catches a glimpse of the head and starts vomiting profusely. Realizing that something is terribly wrong, Maria demands to see what Carlos is hiding. He begs her to leave the flat with Cristina, but Maria doesn't listen. She continues persisting, until Carlos finally gives in, and hands her the head of Cayetano. Maria is horrified and lets out a blood-curdling scream, as her entire world has been shattered in one instant. As everyone else reacts in shock and hysteria, Maria stumbles out to the balcony, and unexpectedly jumps to her death along with the head of her child. Some time later, the cops arrive on the scene, and we are shocked to learn how both Maria and Jesus unalived themselves by jumping from the balcony. The annoying Ruth has suffered an anxiety attack, while pregnant Cristina is in shock, and is being looked after by medics. Carlos is also frozen, unable to say anything except a sentence, "The coffee table." As the movie ends, we see Jesus and Maria reunited in the afterlife, holding their baby. Nearby them lies the coffee table, a chilling reminder of the nightmare that shattered their lives. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.